Good morning, everyone. Hope you're going well. I wanted to do a video explaining and exploring some of the Super Collider code that is powering my latest track, Rune B. I'm pretty in love with Super Collider. It's not perfect at everything, but the things it's good at are pretty cool. If you've never used it before, it's a audio programming language, pure text. You can do awesome sound design in it. It's a very modular experience. You can also do sequencing and composing in it, though that is a lot trickier than using a traditional piano roll in a digital audio workstation. I'm always trying to find new and interesting ways to do composition with it, because I think that offers a lot of very cool stuff. Kind of almost the electronic music equivalent to having sheet music, where you can actually see exactly how sound design and composition works, and share that with people. It's open source, it's free, it works on pretty much every operating system. I'm using Linux Mint here, and I can do my full process there. But yeah, I'll get more into the philosophy maybe in another video. But yeah, let's take a look at the code here. Now, if you haven't heard the track, I recommend you go and listen to it. I'll link it in the description. And also just a note, I know you're over there and I'm looking this way. I thought it'd be a lot nicer for you guys to see kind of my ideal workspace and kind of what I see when I'm working as well. So you can see here the Super Collider code for the project Rune B. If you haven't heard it, or if you have heard it actually, but just want to get an idea of the contours of the track, if I just bring up the Audacity window here, you can see basically this is a slow, minimal ambient track. There's not a lot of moving parts, but I tried to kind of, the two main parts I tried to kind of specifically move in certain ways. You can see that it's kind of a slow build up into what I call cycle in the code, which is made from this layer 1 here. And basically that's that pulsating bass. Then this kind of sine chimes kind of come in a little bit. They're tonal and they're kind of meant to bring in a kind of a more peaceful feel to contrast with the more kind of less happy, but like more rhythmic and more kind of pulsating forward moving bass. And so those two elements are really made to kind of contrast and juxtapose. And then you can see that what happens is that the bass fades out and then you have just the kind of peaceful, what I ended up calling rain sound, which is the kind of chord that moves in a non-traditional kind of time frame. You'll see how that works in a moment. So that's the kind of contour, and then, you know, it kind of, the bass fades back in and then fades out, and then you have the rain again at the end. So if I just hide Audacity here, so we can get a better look at Super Collider. So as I said, the bass is mainly made up of, it's ended up being called cycle, but it's made up of this layer 1 here. And what happens is it's made up essentially of a sine wave. That's that sine oscillator. And it's hovering around a frequency of note 46 on the keyboard, which a MIDI note, I should say, which I believe corresponds to A or A sharp. I don't have it off the top of my head, and I don't have a keyboard in front of me. And in fact, I don't use a keyboard when I make these. I usually use MIDI notes or frequencies. And part of the idea of that is to try and keep my setup as minimal as possible, as portable as possible. You can see that even though it's around 46, this sine wave, which is acting as an LFO, kind of moves the, not the note, but the actual frequency, the hertz, up and down by 2, which is probably not enough to really hear it, but you might kind of hear it. And it's moving quite slowly as well at, what is that? 0.05 times a second. Now, what gives that kind of bass sound a bit more of its character is I'm timesing that sine wave, which would otherwise be kind of steady, but rather than using kind of an envelope, we're actually multiplying it by this square wave or a pulse wave. So you would see, square waves is basically goes from 0. In this case, we're using it as a multiplier. So I'm using it from 0 straight up to 1 down to 0. And so basically that creates that pulse where it's actually controlling the volume of the sine wave. So the volume is going 0 to 1 to 0 to 1. And that's happening 4 times a second. Now what's maybe particularly interesting here is that's wrapped in this lag U-gen. A U-gen in Super Collider is kind of an audio function or a generator. Unit generator is what it stands for. So the lag one basically takes whatever's inside of it and it allows you to kind of soften the slopes. And by soften, I mean, so this pulse one, like I said, it's creating 0 to 1, 1 to 0, and it's the absolute hardest edge possible. What happens in audio is that if your speakers move from like very quickly from 0 to 1 or a wide range incredibly quickly, that's what gets perceived as clicks and pops and kind of sounds that generally you don't want. Now, they can actually be useful by softening them a bit because then they become what's called transients, and that's that hard what you would call attack. That hard start of a sound, the transient, gives it a bit more of a percussive sound. So what you can see here is the lag time we're using is actually very, very small. So what would usually be a change from 0 to 1 in volume over instantly, which creates like too harsh a pop. We don't want that. We're changing it so it's happening over a time frame of 0.001 seconds. So it's still tiny enough that we still get pops or the transients, but it's kind of softened to a point that we actually want them. So we've kind of wrangled the transients. We have them where we want them. And that helps give it a bit more of a rhythmic flavor. Even though it's essentially kind of like a bass line, it kind of sounds a bit more like drums as well, a bit. So now, if we focus on the what I'm calling the rain sound here, which layers 2 through 6, and each layer is controlling a different note. Now, those are the kind of like more peaceful rain sounds, and the notes that play are on your MIDI keyboard: note 70, 75, 77, 82. And there's also an 80 in there that I kind of added afterwards to give it a bit more of a complex chord sound, a bit more of almost a cluster chord. Now, rather than, as you can hear, rather than these just being played instantly as a chord, to give it kind of a more natural, almost rain-like sound, what we're doing is that we're actually, each one kind of pulsates over a slightly different cycle. Basically, they are a sawtooth wave as the volume envelope, so still quite harsh. Now, what's happening is that that note is being pressed kind of 8 times a second, more or less. However, that's the 8 times as the baseline. The actual change between the notes is happening with this sine osc kind of LFO here. So 8 is the baseline. That goes up and down by 7, so it can be pressed anywhere between 1 time a second and 15 times a second. And in fact, all the notes have that same range. The real difference between them is the speed at which it oscillates between that range. So going between 15 times a second to 1 time a second to 15 times a second on this note 70 happens, once every 4 seconds, I believe. So 0.25 hertz. Whereas for note 75, you got 0.24 hertz, 77, 0.23 hertz. For note 82, it's 0.1 hertz, and then note 80, it's 0.18 hertz. And what happens is you get that cool phasing effect. If you're familiar with Steve Reich's work, phasing is basically where you have two very similar things that normally would play all at the same time, but if you slightly lower or lengthen the speed of one of them, then over time as they cycle, they kind of go out of sync and they start phasing, and it creates these really cool rhythms that go in and out of sync, and you do that across multiple notes, and you get almost what I ended up calling like a rain sound. Now I didn't sit down and go, I want to make rain. It was more just experimenting, as a lot of my tracks are, experimenting with sound, and then kind of once I kind of get inspired for what it kind of might be, then I generally refine it in that direction. So then basically what we have here is everything's in these Pan 2 U-gens, and I have kind of sine wave LFOs essentially controlling the volume of each of them. Again, slightly different phases, slightly different frequencies, and that just means that they come in and out slowly at different times. They're also adjusted across the stereo field. And then basically to have a bit more control over the trajectory of the entire track, rather than it all just starting kind of at the same level, we have what I've called here overall fades. And these are just using kind of hand timed envelopes. So basically you can see I slowly bring in the cycle bass sound over 15 seconds. The volume of that layer goes from 0 to 1 over 15 seconds. Then it stays at 1, so it stays at full volume for 200 seconds. And then it fades out to 0 over 25 seconds. And then it stays silent for 30 seconds. Now, one thing I try to do in all my tracks is I try not to use kind of random functions. This started for me a while ago when I did one of the first Super Collider tracks I did. Basically, I had used Markov chains in there, and I had used an element of randomness, but as to record it and to release it and put it on YouTube, I had to do a single take. And I ended up really happy with that take and how kind of the random functions ended up falling. And so if you download the code of that one and play it, it'll sound similar, but the melodies will be slightly different. And that's just what happens with randomness. And so, but I grew attached to that take, and I thought, well, what I'm trying to do here is create code that people can read to kind of learn how to create exactly that thing. And so nowadays I don't use the random functions. I use what's called deterministic functions. So it can sound random. But because none of it is stochastic or random, it's all deterministic. Every single time you play this, it'll always play out the same way. It's mathematical functions that are kind of controlling it, more or less. It's not based on any kind of random or pseudo-random thing that's happening in the background of your computer. And so that's ideally the way I'd like to move forward. Personally. Some people love the randomness. I feel personally that people can grow more attached and build more of a relationship with a music piece that is the same. I'm pretty excited to kind of really try and stick with Super Collider as one of my main tools, or possibly other text-based audio programming languages, just because I think it offers so much as far as sound design, interesting composition, but what's really important to me is its shareability. The fact that you can just read this and explore it and learn from it, and I can do the same with your works. So cool. Thanks, guys. Have a good week.